Even after News 24 unearthed an Indian fake news nest birthing all sorts of BS about South Africa, the SA Social Security Agency, or Sassa, has since had to do damage control for a piece of disingenuous disinformation about a 500 Rand electricity grant that simply does not exist. More with my guest, expert debunker, journalist Andrew Thompson.
Really what we must be doing as model news consumers in South Africa is looking at this and going, why would a Baptist church in North Carolina in the United States be publishing a story about a solar grant or a Sassa grant that has nothing to do with the United States and is not being reported on any other legitimate news website?
Later in our trending topic, while flights these holidays aren't necessarily cheap, with all the frills added to your overall bill, Thompson crunches the domestic numbers. And finally, the first cornerstone of the Union buildings was laid on this day in South African history, heard at the end of the show.
New episodes of The Lead air Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m.
Oh, look at that. The cat's finally out of his cell to speak to parliamentarians. Unprecedented scenes, if you ask me, as Vusi Musi Cat Matlala gives his version of events before parliamentarians. An interesting one to watch, and of course we'll unpack further in our Thursday edition of The Lead. Until then, my name's Graeme Robenheimer, this is The Lead, and this is the South African story. This episode of The Lead is brought to you by 10X Investments. 10X, your future. Moving to our top story today, how did an obscure northern Indian digital agency turn into a global fake news factory, spouting all sorts of Sassa nonsense in South Africa? Well, it's a question that remains burning on the lips of our Disinformation Desk editor Andrew Thompson and me, because even after exposing how IT fames peddles completely made up stories about South Africa last month, the Indian agency has since doubled down, forcing our local authorities to act once again, while the man whose investigation revealed the true source of Mzansi's fake news woes joins me now in our Cape Town studios with a recent journalism award under his belt. Andrew, congrats and welcome to The Lead.
Thanks. Don't say that too loudly because the haters might use it against me. But thanks. Always good to be here.
But there's a cash prize at the end of the rainbow, so I guess you'll be the one laughing?
Yeah,
last?
Laughing all the way to the bank as far as the cash prize goes. But I think a lot of this work is fairly thankless, and it's always nice to get some affirmation from judges who I respect, and I think the industry respects in general. So it's been a wild ride this year, but it's always good to be part of the machinery and just soldiering on.
Absolutely. Well done again. The South African Social Security Agency recently took to Twitter, it's now known as X, obviously, to inform taxpayers of yet another piece of fake news rubbish, this time claiming South Africans could get a 500 Rand Sassa electricity grant from the 1st of December. I mean, that's just sounding too good to be true. It's hogwash. Did this inform you, Andrew, to take a closer look? Did you feel from the outset, this is just yet another of a fake news drivel? And then once you started looking closer, what happened then?
Yeah, I mean, the moment I saw the Sassa tweet go out, I realized that it was part of the same network. I can now spot these stories pretty quickly. And it just struck me how devastating it is that a grants agency that's already stretched and already under a lot of pressure, some of its own doing and some from external, economic situations in South Africa, has to dedicate resources to debunking a story like this. So I knew instantly that it looked like it was from the same playbook as all the others that we've been investigating, and then I spent some time just digging into that a little bit to confirm that.
Right. So what? It's a 500 Rand extra Sassa grant that people could get to help them, keep the lights on. That's allegedly what the fake news offers, right?
Exactly. And so it's one of those, it's too good to be true, targeting people who are desperate, who might think, wow, this is so huge. That's a lot of money to a lot of people. And the idea with these stories is to get that emotive, instinctive response to it. So, and I looked into it, and there were, there's maybe 30 stories with minor variations of the same theme. And that's, I think, what's so devastating is if it's not a 500 Rand electricity grant, it's double your grants in December, or it's half your grant if you don't do the following. Those sorts of narratives, which are really just kind of AI slop to the maximum, but
100%.
But they absolutely target the people who are so desperate, you know.
Can you imagine a pensioner, someone who's not spending an awful lot of time on social media other than what Facebook is coughing up to them? And Facebook, I often find, or WhatsApp, these two meta platforms that have so much AI crap on them, could get this fake news poiky, because I'm imagining them in India sort of sitting there and going, as we discussed previously on ChatGPT or Gemini, and going, what are the hot button issues in South Africa? It's poverty, Sassa comes up a lot, and, power cuts, and let's just lump it all together and send it out. And to somebody who's not following Andrew Thompson, who doesn't have a News 24 subscription, who's not even listening to this podcast, they'd easily fall for that.
Yeah, and it's fair enough. And I think that's the nature of it. And a lot of these stories spread via WhatsApp, removed of the context of the clear warning signs, which I think we'll get to again in a little while. But devoid of those clear warning signs, it's quite easy for someone just to see it and go, cool, let me hit send to the 5 other retirees, or to my local community WhatsApp group of retirees or people on grants.
Yeah. So last time, it was a very particular line of source code that essentially gave you the smoking gun for you to find IT Fames, this Northern Indian obscure digital agency that had been spouting all of this fake news, not only just with South Africa as its victim, but many other, let's say more westernized countries. What did you find this time around after Sassa had to come out on X and say, this is another piece of fake news? You have your checklist of fake news differentiators. You looked at that, and what did you find? Is it an IT Fames piece of drivel?
Yes, unsurprisingly, the reference to IT Frames that I discovered and that led me to them has been removed from all of the websites that I'm checking now, which is not surprising. Obviously, they realized that I pointed out to them that there was that slip, but they haven't removed all of the other key identifiers. So the number one thing is the use of a fake author bio, and all of these stories have, it's almost like schoolboys in a computer lab who have found this sort of slightly naughty little hobby that they can make up fake news and create fake journalism personas and bios. And this one is a bio and a name of Ruth Moore, and this quote unquote Ruth Moore woman has written hundreds of articles about Sassa. Of course, Ruth Moore is entirely fabricated. It's a stolen identity that I was able to quickly trace to a lawyer in Colorado. Her profile picture and her name match the exact same author bio. And of course, I've contacted her and told her that this is going on. She is unrelated to the matter. Clearly, what happens is these guys just find a picture that looks convincing enough. They steal their name, they steal their identity, and then they create a bio saying, in this case, Ruth Moore is a respected journalist from South Africa.
Was she alarmed?
She hasn't responded. So,
okay.
And I've uncovered 6 or 7 stolen identities through this process and emailed every one of them, and not one has responded to me. But I suppose that's the nature of the online beast, is they don't know whether to trust me either in that process.
Yeah, I was about to say.
So if I send an email saying your identity's been stolen, it probably goes straight to spam. And to be fair, the impact on them is fairly minimal. Not a lot of people know it, that it's them. It's really just the profile picture that lives on these fake news websites. So that was the first thing. But then it had all the other hallmarks of all the other fake news websites that I've been tracking. And the most obvious thing is it was this actual website belonged to a Baptist church in North Carolina. And really what we must be doing is, as model news consumers in South Africa, is looking at this and going, why would a Baptist church in North Carolina in the United States be publishing a story about a solar grant or a Sassa grant that has nothing to do with the United States and is not being reported on any other legitimate news website? So when I saw those, I just knew it. And in the story, I was able to pull all of those little threads out and make a fairly compelling case that this is just part of the same network.
Just quickly, 2 tips for somebody listening thus far if they suspect that they may have seen recently a fake news article from this particular agency or somewhere else. What are the hallmarks that they very quickly need to look out for right off the bat of it?
I think the most important thing is, at the moment, if it has anything to do with Sassa, grants, solar, power, the sort of hot button topics in South Africa that you haven't seen anywhere else on any other news channel, that's your first warning sign. Especially if it makes you want to click it and read it. So that's alarm bells. Sassa have very clear channels of communication, and a North Carolina Baptist Church website is not one of them. So that's the absolute first warning sign. But the other is a very clear AI composite image that accompanies the stories, often with text over it that sort of has like 500 Rand with an exclamation mark, or a picture of Cyril Ramaphosa. So if you see those like very weird AI generated featured images that no reputable news website ever would use, along with a sensational headline, just don't forward it.
You say weird, but I've got family members, I know people that have sent on stuff that they didn't think it looked weird, Andrew. Yeah. And that's obviously the whole issue lies, right?
Exactly. And I think what's important in that is we've all been in a situation where we've knowingly or unknowingly shared something that may or may not be true. And increasingly what I'm encouraging people to do, especially in the comments who are jumping into those, is it's actually more fun to be a little bit of an amateur debunker than it is to be the first person to share breaking news. And I think we've lived in a world where there was a bit of sort of pride in being the first person to announce the death of a celebrity or a massive piece of breaking news, where suddenly someone would WhatsApp their family or their friends about something that they've uncovered, and, hey guys, did you see this, in the hopes that it would kind of get them a little bit of kudos. I think now what we should try and focus on is that there's a little bit of kudos in going, hey guys, this actually isn't true, this is why it's not true, and let's not forward it. And that doesn't mean being rude or mean or aggressive or saying you're an idiot for sharing this. It means treating people with respect and going, hey, so these are the 4 reasons why this isn't true.
Yes.
And I would encourage you not to share it, and I would encourage you to tell the person who shared it with you why it's fake as well. And then we can slowly start maybe it's a pipe dream, but a chain reaction against this sort of stuff coming out.
And cut. TEDx talk in the bag, Andrew. This should be in a book that you're penning, hopefully somewhere in the background. Any comment since the last time we spoke to IT fames? They were fairly sort of amicable in their responses, but also combative to a certain extent. Anything else since then? Because obviously it feels like they're doubling down.
Yeah. Ironically, no, nothing back officially from them, but just, as you say, doubling down on the stories. So this website that we looked into this week had within, it only was, that URL, the domain was bought I think about a week ago, and within a week it has 30 fake news stories on it.
Yeah.
So there's no signs of them slowing down. Unfortunately, the difficulty is it's an Indian firm. It's our hands are tied in many ways of how far we can go with it. Obviously, we report to search engines and to registrars all of the abuse that these guys are performing, but it's limited in terms of what more we can do apart from expose them and continuously point out just how nefarious this operator is.
Yes, whilst they continue, as I've seen in some of your responses to the News 24 cast of thousands in the comment sections of your article, which I gotta say, Andrew's like one of those few journalists that goes and responds most of the time to what people have to say. Let's have a look at one of those particular comments. Quote unquote the following: there are some very bright anti-scammers out there, especially in the US. These guys delight in getting into operations like this, exposing the culprits and then eventually taking them down. He's obviously this particular, or they are referring to the very popular YouTube channels where guys now come and they hack into Indian sort of like call centers and expose people there who prey on senior citizens in the US with credit card details and cloning and all the rest. But what this particular comment missed is that they haven't seen your fake news factory expose to begin with. You've literally done what it says on the tin.
Yeah, so that's what we were able to do with our story last month, was to really put a name and a face to the full operation. And I'd encourage anyone to go and have a read of that.
Absolutely.
But I'd also say that the stories that we see on YouTube about the scammers are compelling. I've watched lots of them. They are still there for clicks on YouTube. So the forensic investigators that I've spoken to about this in the past have made it very clear that they're often using loopholes that are provided to them by the software companies that do remote desktop management.
Didn't know that.
And there's very little evidence to prove that those call centers are ultimately shut down anyway. So I think it's in many ways they do similar to what we've done, where you think you've achieved great things by naming and shaming a company, but really they just go, what are you going to do, mate? So yeah, those scammer YouTube sites YouTube videos are great. And I find them fascinating, and I think it's all part of the same network. And if we can all work together, that would be great. But it's I think it's still we play a game of whack-a-mole with the individual stories, but we're also going to play whack-a-mole with the individual agencies. And I can almost guarantee you that if one goes down, 3 others pop up somewhere else in India. And to be clear, there isn't only one agency that's operating on this level. There are others that we just haven't got to yet.
Absolutely. One more quick user comment on this topic, Andrew, quote unquote. While this is frustrating to manage, the problem is far greater than these guys. TikTok spreads fake information all day long. Thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, we're fighting battles on many fronts. So, of course. And I think TikTok and Instagram and YouTube are very compelling mediums as well. So, and those fly virally. Within days, those videos have tens of thousands of views. So, of course, I think what our goal is to do whatever we can with the resources that we have to bring these stories to people's attention, regardless of the medium. So, as always, I'd encourage anyone to send us stories that they want investigated, and we can then try and allocate some time and effort into that. But we don't pick and choose our mediums. We go with whatever we can to bring an end to as much of this fake news as possible.
I'm going to dare to say that whilst IT Fames obviously gets website traffic revenue from all of these fake news articles, they're also keeping the very brilliant Disinformation Desk editor Andrew Thompson in a job. Yeah. And he's having a good time exposing all of this.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. And I think it's, part of the process is you've got to be driven to have a purpose in this whole line of work. And I think in this case, it really is just about protecting the vulnerable people who may fall victim to this, but B, also just looking for a sanitized news environment where the stuff doesn't get to proliferate beyond what at the moment is sort of, as I said earlier, sort of schoolboys in a computer lab. You could flick a switch and it could be a lot more nefarious, and that's what we're keeping our eye on.
And then Sassa's had to deal with all of these calls and then put out the things, debunk it on their ends. It's just an awful lot of energy wasted on that sort of side of things. Indian fake news factory doubles down as fresh Sassa hoax forces official denial. If you'd like to read what we just spoke about, that is still trending on the front page of News 24. Andrew Thompson, stick around, because lead listeners, we've got him up next with another very interesting topic just after these. At 10x Investments, we don't only help you invest for retirement, we help you craft a legacy. With thoughtful planning and meticulous execution, you can create the retirement future you've always wanted. Invest with us today. 10x your future. 10x is a licensed FSP.
Listening to the latest edition of The Lead on News 24 with Graeme Rowenheimer. If you've got an opinion on what you've heard so far, drop us a short voice note on our WhatsApp hotline. That's 072-562-3179. Trending topic.
Moving to our trending topic today, there's no such thing as low-cost domestic airliners in South Africa these days. That's the argument from journalist Andrew Thompson, who's still with me in our studios now. Instead, Andrew contests we have carriers that rather offer cheaper flights but still charge extra for all the frills. And it's those optional extras, including an extra item of checked luggage that, before you know it, will be overloading your checkout basket these holidays. Andrew, welcome back. What did you find here? For the most part, one of the things that stuck with me from your latest piece in that regard was we still got it pretty good here in South Africa, because a lot of the times when we do buy a ticket, we're still getting one checked in luggage. We sometimes, depending on the airline, are still getting a free snack or a free drink. We actually got it pretty good.
There was a time when we had low-cost airlines in South Africa. It was fairly cheap to fly between Johannesburg and Cape Town. Kulula was probably the pioneer of that, where for 500-600 rand you could get a flight between big cities. And these days what's happened is we don't have low-cost airlines anymore. We've actually just got no frills airlines. And that ultimately means that the prices are going up, and they are increasingly cutting the benefits that come with it, the seats, the bags, the free food, that sort of thing. But yeah, we do have it pretty good in South Africa, that the airlines are quite relaxed around that, mostly because those prices are a little bit higher than they used to be. And I think also the issue that I've raised in this article is that you might think you can get away with a carry-on bag from Cape Town to Joburg, but if you're then connecting on to London or Amsterdam, you're going to get caught at that check-in gate, and they're going to check that bag at that gate, and it's going to cost you a hell of a lot. So, we have it pretty good, but I think it's really important that we start sticking within the confines of all of those rules, and actually realize that we need to follow the broader, especially on the carry-on bags rules. But increasingly, we have fees that are being tacked onto a lot of the airline tickets.
And if I look at my experiences with Ryanair, and if I look at my experiences with BA in the UK in domestic flights, so if technically I went internationally from London to the Republic of Ireland. That is international. But I also went London to Manchester with the BA flight, and then the Ryanair flight to Ireland. So with the Ryanair flight, that is low cost. You're really getting nothing. Everything is extra.
And it was probably a couple of euros or pounds. That it probably was relatively cheap on the actual fare.
Yes, very cheap. Whereas with BA, the one I didn't pay for because it was covered by my scholarship, that was I got a free snack and all the rest, and obviously it's BA, so it's going to be a little bit more expensive. But enough of that. Let's have a look at the low cost, allegedly domestic carriers, and you've basically chosen Lyft, FlySafair, SAA, Chemair, as well as Airlink. You've rated them in terms of categories. You've got seat selection, food, ticket changes, and the checked bag. Let's begin with seat selection. What did you find, Andrew?
Sure. So a lot of airlines used to offer free seat selection. Now they're increasingly finding a way to profitize that. So they're charging you, some of them are even charging you if you just want to choose any seat anywhere. Some let you choose at check-in. So Lyft will give you free seat selection in the back of the plane at any time. You can pick your seat basically from the middle of the plane backwards. Otherwise, it's 50 to 70 Rand, and that's for the front of the plane or extra legroom. Safair is much the same, 50 to 70 Rand, except they've now introduced a policy whereby if you want to select any seat before you board, you have to pay at least 30 Rand. SAA, much the same, 50 Rand, 70 Rand, and 132 Rand if you want a little extra legroom. And then there are two that offer free seat selection by and large on domestic flights, and that's Chemair and Airlink. And then it's sort of first come, first serve. So it's, if you have your favorite seat, you're going to look to spend at least $70 to secure it.
Yeah, I took a Lyft not so long ago, and I was like, free snacks, that's great, because I tend to always take FlySafair, and FlySafair, you gotta pay for the extra sweeties and whatever that you want. Maybe you want an alcoholic beverage. I always tend to have airport beers. That's one of my golden rules. My wife doesn't understand it, Andrew. She doesn't understand it.
Even if it's 9 o'clock in the morning?
Okay, maybe a little early. If it's international, we can get away with it. So what does the food category say? Most of them offer food except FlySafair.
Yeah, exactly. So food typically on foreign low-cost airlines is where they make the most money. And the argument is often that they'll make more on a muffin sold than they will on the ticket sold. Interestingly, in South Africa, they primarily include free snacks and free food, and that depends on what time of day you're flying. Airlink is really good with their food. They'll give you a sandwich, or they'll give you a full meal depending on the time of day if it's over a meal. And KMA tend to do sort of light snacks, sandwiches, chocolates, that sort of stuff. SAA as a full service airline also will generally offer you some sort of meal. And Lyft also will give you a free coffee and a free drink and a couple of light little snacks. And SAF Air have made a business out of selling their coffee, selling their drinks and all of that. So it's in a way the argument has always been that if you don't want to eat, you can save money on the tickets because you can just go with a cheaper ticket. But then you need to check whether that ticket's actually that much cheaper or not, and that's the catch. So if you are a hungry traveler and you don't want to pay for your food, you could go with the other airlines. If you find a really cheap fare on FlySAF Air, just pack your own sandwich.
Okay, ticket changes. This is a very contentious one because I'll let you know, lead listeners, our very first flight from Cape Town to Gqeberha for my honeymoon, my wife and I missed. Okay, because we got to the airport and it was flippin' busy and we were dumb because we thought it was going to be fine. But we heard from the staff that Monday's so hectic. Yeah. So we were with FlySAF Air, and I'm by no means, grumple still skin about it. But we went to FlySAF Air and we were like, look, is there another flight later in the day? And it's not because it's a limited route to Gqeberha. So the following day we could only get the next flight. But we had to pay the full amount to change and get the next flight. Really? And that's a lot of money, mate. What is the ticket changes? That's just an aside story. What is the ticket changes revelation as our second last category revealed to you, Andrew? So
the most flexible airline in South Africa with date and name changes is Lyft, and they built their whole reputation on being super flexible. They kind of rose out of the COVID ashes, where people were chopping and changing and flights were being cancelled and airlines were having to be grounded. So if you are uncertain about your dates, Lyft is almost always the one to go for. And they only charge you to change your dates within 24 hours of the departure date, which is really good. All the others will charge you between 250 Rand and 575 Rand to change your date. And don't forget, you're then going to have to pay the difference in the airfare. If it so happens that the airfare that you're flying on your change date is actually cheaper, you don't get that money back. But if it happens to be more expensive, you're going to have to pay in the difference. So basically, 300 Rand is about the average that you're going to pay to change your ticket in South Africa. And oftentimes that's basically a third of what you've paid for on your one-way ticket anyway. So it's a clever money-making issue. And what someone pointed out in the comments, which is also very true, is often it's even just a name change requires a cost attached to it. So if you have a shortening of your name that everybody knows you by, and you call yourself Chris, and your passport or your ID actually says Christopher, and you need to change that, you're probably going to have to pay a couple of $100 just to make that adjustment. So
silly man.
Very important to be make sure you've got the right details and to arrive on time to your flight, Graeme. I thought you would know better.
Hey, that was just for example purposes, Andrew. Okay, checked bag. This one's the biggest contentious issue, right? Because like we started this conversation to end off now, we said we spoiled in South Africa because most of the time the ticket that you pay for gets in one checked-in piece of luggage that if you, like Graeme, want to arrive early, you can get that in before you go through the gates. What does this category reveal?
Yeah, so the only airlines that let you bring a bag check a bag in the hold without paying at all are SAA, SEME, and Airlink. And they'll let you put a bag in the hold, which is quite an unusual thing these days for an airline of any kind, really. Yeah. Oftentimes, airlines are charging a couple of hundred or even more for the privilege of putting a bag in the hold. The two airlines that do charge to check a bag are Lyft and FlySAF Air. So
let's just quickly be clear here. This is the extra amount that you'll pay just for one piece of checked-in luggage.
Yeah, to put it in the hold.
Okay.
And that's 200 Rand on Lyft and 155 Rand on FlySAF Air if you want to put a bag in the hold. All the airlines do, unlike many airlines now around the world, all the local airlines do let you bring a piece of carry-on baggage with you. What we're seeing increasingly, and there's actually a story coming out later this week about packing carry-on only, But we're seeing increasingly in South Africa, more and more people are trying to fit their lives into a carry-on bag and then sneak it past and then squeeze it into the overhead bins, which causes a lot of issues in the planes. But then it also causes issues, as we mentioned earlier, when you get to the gate in Heathrow and they go, sorry, this doesn't fit in our overhead bins, where they're a lot stricter. And then you're going to have to pay sometimes up to 2,000 Rand just to put that bag in the hold. So carry-ons are still fairly flexible in South Africa, although AXA repeatedly threatens to charge and to come down on people who are trying to sneak oversized carry-ons in. But if baggage is your main concern and you can find a ticket that's relatively cheap on Airlink, Keme or SAA, you'll get a lot more included in that ticket.
Yeah. I once went to Switzerland. We got gifted as part of the embassy tour 2 Swiss army knives. Very original, very nice. Silly dumb Graeme when it comes to
hand luggage.
I put it in my hand luggage. No, but wait, there's your catch. So I got to the machines at Zurich International. The lady looks at, she had lots of tattoos, very beautiful woman. She opens up my bag, the hand luggage, and she goes, and what about these? So I said, I didn't put them in my checked luggage. She put them back in, and she allowed me to fly to Joburg with that in my checked luggage in the plane.
Your reputation obviously precedes you. She obviously knew you were a trustworthy individual. But yeah,
allegedly.
But that's a big one. And the other one that catches a lot of South African travelers out is that domestically we're allowed to travel with as many liquids as we want, in as many as big a volume as you want. You can put a bottle of wine in the hold.
I actually didn't know that.
But you can't do that on any international flights. They're starting to change a little bit in the States now, where they're allowing more liquids in. But what inevitably happens is someone brings a bottle of cologne or some sort of shampoo or some sort of it's often the toiletries, and they'll get through the domestic flight, and then they'll land in Zurich or London, and they'll say, sorry, you can't carry this bottle of whiskey with you that you bought in duty free somewhere else. So it's a real issue that you need to be aware. And the main point of these articles is also to make people aware that if you can get through security or through the check-in process here with a bag or with certain liquids, you're not necessarily going to get that on the other side, and that's often going to cost you quite a lot more if they find out.
Enough of Graeme's waffling storytime stories. This is the final question. Which airliner out of these 5 that we've set aside ends up being sort of easy on your pocket preferences during strictly the booking process? And folks, lead listeners, I know what you're going to say. We're not taking into account the different trips, whatever the particular route is, time of day, month, and all of those things. We're just looking at this within the context of the categories that Andrew has put out in terms of the frills argument here. Andrew, do you think Lyft is the winner?
I would say if you are a flyer who might have to change your plans, Lyft is almost always the one to go with. But if you're a flyer who likes checked bags or likes the snacks, then don't forget the slightly more premium airlines. Airlink, SAA are often a little bit more expensive on their prices, but look at what they include. Do the price calculations yourselves based on our table that we've done, and you can then see sometimes it'll actually be a little bit cheaper than the quote unquote low cost airlines in South Africa. And
that table is in what SA Airlines charge for seats, bags, food, and changes ahead of the festive season. That's the absolutely excellent Andrew Thompson with some stellar journalism as always. My guest on the lead today, Andrew Nkosakakulu. Danki. Have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks, Graeme.
Looking for a smarter weekend scroll? The Weekender is your ultimate guide to bold stories, sharp opinion, and a fresh lens on life in Mzansi. From exclusive interviews and powerful essays to wine picks, playlists, and pop culture gems, it's your perfect weekend read all in one place, landing every Saturday on News 24. And finally,
we're ending off now on this day in history, the 26th of November 1910. Well, on this very day, the first cornerstone of the Union buildings was laid in Pretoria, marking the rise of what would become the seat of South Africa's government and one of our most iconic landmarks, designed by Sir Herbert Baker and A side note, he also designed the current embassy for the South African government in London, just a stone's throw away from Trafalgar Square. In fact, it forms part of the square itself, and I didn't know that Sir Herbert Baker had also constructed that particular Springbok house. But construction started in 1909 for the Union buildings and drew on more than 1,000 artisans, 14 million bricks, and stone quarried right on Mankey's Kop. The twin wings were built to symbolize the unification of the 4 territories that had just been brought together to form the new Union of South Africa. Over the decades, the Union buildings became both a center of power and a stage for protest, from the famous 1956 Women's March to the gatherings that shaped our democracy, and today it remains a symbol of national memory, heritage, and political life. Just 2 years after the first construction started for the Union buildings, the ANC was formed as Africa's oldest liberation movement. All of this, of course, as a response to new laws being brought against the black African majority, notwithstanding the Vereniging Treaty at the end of the Anglo-Boer War, which was just 8 years prior in 1902. That treaty had barred the African black majority from taking part in political events in South Africa. So a very interesting period of time that often gets overlooked within history. Of course, as indicated at the beginning of the show, in our next edition we'll bring you a lot more from Vusi Musi Kat Maklala's testimony before Parliament's ad hoc committee. Interesting times there, to say the least. Drop us your mails, thelead@24.com. Hit like, follow, and subscribe. Drop us a WhatsApp, 07256233179. My name's Graeme Robenheimer. So long as there's trusted news first, we'll always have The Lead. This episode of The Lead was brought to you by 10x Investments. 10x your future.